Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I was wrong about something in my last video, and seeing as it's been eating away at me for the last couple of days, I figured that another video was in order to further expand upon my last one. So first things first, let's mention what the BBC's response to what I uncovered in my last video was. Namely, what they did was to simply remove the section I quoted from their article without posting any sort of update or any sort of clarification, so it's like they never made the claim in the first place. Highly professional journalism there, guys. And then Salon, on the other hand, has actually kept their article up despite their one and only source here disappearing down the memory hole. Now that is what I call quality, reliable journalism. Anyway, let's get to the part where I was wrong. I was wrong in coming to the conclusion that since there was no official UN source for the claim, that the journalist in question had just pulled it out of thin air. I was also wrong to assume that the UN estimate, as almost everyone else did, was relatively recent. This isn't a new study that they've done. This 95% statistic actually goes back a hell of a lot further than this article, and so that's what I'm going to do here. Track down and show you how this claim has been passed from organization to organization in a bizarre game of Chinese whispers over the better part of the last 5 to 6 years. So, as one of my commenters noted, in the screenshot of the I now assume deleted Jonathan McIntosh tweet, he actually expands upon the claim. Instead of simply being the UN estimates 95% of all aggressive and denigrating behavior in online spaces is aimed at women, the claim is from Jonathan McIntosh: the UN estimates that 95% of aggressive behavior, harassment, abusive language and denigrating images in online spaces are aimed at women and come from partners or former male partners. Now the first quote, which comes from the BBC, is actually obviously a paraphrase of the second, using a little journalistic license. I would speculate to hide how ridiculous and patently false the full quote is. Once again, I'll go back to Pew Research. That shows a completely different story than what the UN is saying. So, in terms of aggressive behavior, which I'm going to assume means physical threats, it's almost equal between genders in the Pew study. In terms of harassment, while women are far more likely to suffer sexual harassment, sustained harassment campaigns are almost equal once again. Ditto for abusive language, and the final category that the UN discussed of denigrating images could mean literally anything from revenge porn to a meme that someone doesn't like, so I'm not going to even bother with that one. However, of course, there's no need to contradict something that the UN were never stupid enough to say in the first place, and that brings us back to where this information actually comes from. So if you Google the second quote, the expanded and revised quote, you come to an article by the Association for Progressive Communications entitled "How Technology is Being Used to Perpetrate Violence Against Women and How to Fight It." Listed under the quote-unquote facts section is the very first place I can actually find mention of this quote-unquote statistic. Now, there's no way to know for certain how old this document is, but from the 20-year celebration logo on the document and the mentions of 2009 sources in the document, I would guess that it is from 2010, 5 or so years ago. And it's also worth noting that there are other APC documents that list this claim from the same year, but it's the only document from the APC making this claim that actually finally links to the source of this claim. So if you follow the link to the supposed source of this claim in the document, you'll just find a 404 page at the UN. So you have to actually Google part of the URL to find yet another 404 page, but a clue to the title of the study you are looking for. And then you need to Google that to finally get to where the originally linked source for this very specific 95% claim is. So at long last we have it, the mythical UN report which actually backs up this assertion. Only it doesn't. The report in question is called "Ending Violence Against Women from Words to Action," which was done by the UN Secretary General in 2006, almost 10 years ago now. The report itself is focused on issues of violence against women in the real world and makes no mention of the 95% figure whatsoever. In fact, it only mentions the internet 6 times, one of which is saying that violence against women, like say stalking, could be enabled by new technologies and that governments need to find an appropriate response to it. That's it. It recognizes the potential of threats to women, but it doesn't expand that idea. This has nothing to do with internet harassment, the likes of which the APC and associated groups are talking about, and in fact, I'm flat out going to say this. This claim of 95% looks like it was entirely fabricated by the APC to cause alarm and to create this problem of a digital pandemic of nasty things happening to women on the internet, which just isn't the case when you look at the data from reputable studies. Furthermore, this type of reckless misinformation is not just unethical journalistic practice, but it also has the potential to do real damage when it falls into the hands of social policy makers as well. It's not just the public who are the targets of such propaganda, and that's what you always need to remember. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a starship to board. I've been Dangerous Analysis. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and as always,
good night and good luck.